Manhattan, 1974. Late November. The office was on the fourth floor of a building on the east side of Sunset Boulevard. What you could see through the windows was the brick wall of the building across. The light was greenish, cold. It was past 3 o'clock, but it felt like evening. Sylvester Stallone was sitting in the waiting room. He was 28 years old. The left side of his face was paralyzed from birth. His speech was slow and unclear. Sometimes people had to lean in to understand what he was saying. This made them uncomfortable. Stallone knew this. He had a screenplay in his hand. He had written it himself. In 3 months. Every night, at the kitchen table of his apartment in Hell's Kitchen. The light was dim. The heating didn't work. His fingers were freezing. But he had written it. The screenplay was about a boxer. Someone with no chance. Someone whose name nobody knew. But someone who wanted the right to survive. Stallone hadn't come to sell the screenplay. He had come to sell himself. There were 3 other people in the waiting room. They were all handsome. They all looked comfortable. One had perfect hair. Another had a spotless shirt. The third was smiling. Stallone's hair was greasy. His shirt hadn't been changed in 2 days. He had 2 days of stubble on his face. He wasn't smiling. The receptionist was avoiding eye contact with him. This wasn't something new. Stallone had been invisible most of his life, even as a child, in school hallways, in gyms, in restaurants. People didn't look at him. If they did, they didn't look for long. The New York winter was coming on hard. It wasn't snowing outside, but the air was freezing cold. Stallone had no coat. His jacket was a thin windbreaker he'd bought from a thrift store 2 years ago. The zipper was broken. His wife wanted him to come home, to find something else, to stop writing, to be normal. Stallone didn't know what to answer, because he didn't know what going back was. What was normal? Which normal? How could he go back to something he'd never been? When his name was called, the other 3 men looked at him. One smiled. Not with pity but with curiosity, as if he was trying to understand Stallone, but couldn't. Stallone stood up. He was holding the screenplay tightly. He could feel his hands sweating. The secretary opened the door. There were 2 men inside. One was at the desk. The other was leaning back in his chair. Both were in suits. Both were clean-shaven. The man at the desk was screenwriter Barry Milstein. He was in his 50s. An ashtray with a smoking cigarette sat in front of him. His eyes were tired but sharp. The other man was producer Leon Fisher. Younger, maybe 45. His hair was slicked back. There was a permanent smile on his face. But his eyes weren't smiling. Sylvester Stallone, Milstein said. He mispronounced the name. He read Sylvester like Sylvester. Stallone didn't correct him. The screenplay's yours, Fisher said. His expression didn't change. Rocky, is that right? Yes. I read it. Fisher paused. Well written. Stallone waited. But you're not going to play it. The words came like air. Not harsh, just clear. Stallone said nothing. Look, Milstein said, leaning forward. You write well, but you're not an actor. I'm an actor. No, Fisher said, keeping his smile. You're a writer trying to act. There's a difference. I am Rocky. They both stopped. They looked at each other. Then they turned to Stallone. Listen, Milstein said. Your story. I get it. But there are dozens of guys who can do this. Real actors. Good-looking guys. Guys the audience can love. Fisher tapped his hand on the desk. Gently. We're thinking Burt Reynolds. Maybe Ryan O'Neal. You put them in. The movie gets made. You put you in, nobody comes. Stallone's jaw tightened. The face, Fisher said, choosing his words. Your face is a problem. Milstein sighed. What he means. I know what he means. Stallone's voice was low. Fisher leaned back in his chair. Look, this is a good deal even for you. You sell the screenplay. You get good money. Maybe 15,000. Maybe 20,000. With that money you straighten out your life. You start something. Without me as Rocky. Rocky won't be made. Then it won't be made at all. Silence. Milstein lit a cigarette. He blew the smoke toward the ceiling. Kid, be realistic. Nobody here knows you. Nobody wants to see you on a movie poster. This is a business. It runs on money, not emotion, not on feelings. Fisher added. On logic. Stallone stood up. I assure you, Fisher said. This is your best chance. It might not come again. Stallone walked toward the door. Sly, Milstein said. This time he'd said the name right. This city doesn't give you a second chance. It barely gives you the first. Stallone turned. He didn't look at them. He just spoke. I'll create my own chance. He closed the door and left. Outside it had gotten dark. Stallone walked. He didn't know where he was going. He just walked. He passed through Broadway. The lights were bright. People were laughing. They were going to dinner, going to the theater, going home. Stallone just walked. He stopped at a corner. He still had the screenplay in his hand. The pages were crumpled from his sweaty hands. He was in front of a bank. He looked inside through the glass. The security guard saw him. He frowned. Stallone immediately moved away. He found a park. He sat on an empty bench. It was dark, cold. No one was there. He put his hands on his knees. He lowered his head. He thought about nothing. He just sat. He breathed. He felt cold. He felt his heartbeat. The sky was dark. No stars were visible. You never see them in New York. He sat. 10 minutes. 20 minutes. Maybe more. He breathed. Then he stood up. The next day Stallone called his agency. I turned down the offer, he said. His voice sounded calm. The agent was silent for 2 seconds. Then he exploded. What did you do? I'm not selling the screenplay. Not unless I play it. Sly, this is insane. $15,000. It's not about money. Everything is about money. You're starving, your wife is starving. Stallone hung up. The phone rang again. He didn't answer. A week later he talked to another agent. Younger. More ambitious. His name was Jim Russo. He worked out of a small office in the Bronx. I don't want to sell Rocky. Stallone said. Okay. I want to play Rocky. I understand. And nobody's going to want that. Russo smiled. But it was a ruthless smile. Right. Nobody's going to want that. But I'm going to do it. How? I have to find a way. Russo leaned back. He lit a cigarette. Look. I'm going to be honest with you. In this city there are 100 guys more handsome than you. 100 guys who speak better than you. But you have something they don't. What? Stupidity. Russo laughed. Stupidity. You know you have nothing to lose. That makes you free. Stallone said nothing. If the screenplay's good, Russo said, and you don't give up, maybe someone will be interested. A very small movie. A very low budget. But maybe is enough. Maybe is enough. That day when Stallone got home, he told his wife, the money from the sale wasn't coming. His wife cried. Stallone cried too. But he didn't change his decision. The next 3 months were spent waiting. Russo talked to various people. Small productions. Independent producers. Nobody was interested. Stallone asked the same question every day. Anything? Russo always gave the same answer. Not yet. November, December, January. The money had run out. Stallone had to sell his dog. But Cools, a big dog, loyal. He'd sold him to a man in front of a liquor store. For $150. When he took the dog away, Stallone hadn't looked back. At home he and his wife weren't talking. There was nothing left to talk about. There was only silence. Late January. A phone call came. A small studio. A division of United Artists. 2 young producers. Their names were Irwin Winkler and Robert Chardoff. They wanted to make movies on a small budget. Independent projects. Rocky's screenplay caught their interest, Russo said. But they don't want you to play it. I know. Refuse again. Yes. Russo sighed. Let me talk to them. February. A meeting was arranged. Winkler and Chardoff met with Stallone face to face. There were 4 people in the room. Winkler, Chardoff, Russo and Stallone. Winkler spoke. The screenplay's good. But you're not famous. Nobody knows you. I am Rocky. Stallone said. The same sentence. For the 3rd time. Chardoff smiled. You keep saying that, but you can't prove it. Shoot it. You'll see. The risk is too big. Stallone leaned forward. Give the risk to me. Lower the budget. Lower my pay. But let me play it. Silence. Winkler and Chardoff looked at each other. How low? Winkler said. As low as it needs to be. We're only thinking about $1 million budget. Lower. Chartoff raised his eyebrows. What do you want? To play it. Another silence. Finally Winkler spoke. Okay. But we choose the director. Okay. And you'll take minimum wage. Okay. And if the movie doesn't work, you're responsible. Stallone didn't hesitate. Deal. They shook hands. When Stallone left, his hands were shaking. The movie was shot in 28 days, with $1 million budget, with less than half of it. The director was John G. Avildsen, someone who liked documentary style, raw, real, unstylized. Stallone came early every morning. He left late every night. He'd memorized the scenes, but not just his scenes, everyone's scenes. The actors found him strange. He was too intense, too serious, but when the camera turned on, he became someone else. He became real. The film was completed in late 1976. When it was released, late November, in small theaters, not much advertising was done. The first week, the theaters were half full. Stallone went to a screening. He sat in the back. Nobody recognized him. People laughed. People went silent. People cried. When the movie ended, there was no applause, but people sat for a long time. Nobody got up right away. Stallone quietly left the theater. He went home. He said nothing to his wife. That night he couldn't sleep. The film exploded 3 weeks later. It broke box office records. Critics wrote about it. Oscars started being discussed. Stallone became famous overnight. But that moment was the moment in the office. The moment he stood before Fisher and Milstein. You're not going to play it. Without me as Rocky. Rocky won't be made. That moment was everything. Because that moment defined who Stallone was. The years that followed came. Rocky sequels. Other movies. Money. Fame. Everything fame brings. But Stallone never forgot that moment. Years later in an interview, he was asked, "Did you ever regret it? If you'd taken the money, your life could have been easier." Stallone smiled. But it was a tired smile. "If I'd taken the money, I would have lived. But I wouldn't have known who I was." Rocky wasn't a boxing movie. It was a survival movie. It was a movie about knowing who you are. If Stallone had accepted in that office, who would he be now? A screenwriter. Maybe successful. Maybe he'd have money. Maybe he'd be happy. But he wouldn't be himself. And this question isn't just for Stallone. This question is for all of us. How many times have we thought about selling ourselves? How many times have we thought about choosing the easier path? How many times have we chosen what we could be, instead of who we are? Stallone chose a different path that day. He chose himself, and the world recognized him. The question is, do you recognize you?